I'm your host for today's video, Taylor, and today I'm introducing Noah to Klaus.
Ooh.
Oh wait, I totally riffed that.
You riffed the entire thing. We just talked about not riffing, and then you riffed
Okay,
the entire
sorry.
thing.
I'm sorry. Hello everyone, today I'm your host, Taylor, and
I'm
this
Noah.
is Noah. There we go. And today on You Didn't Catch That, we're talking about Klaus, the animated movie on Netflix that took 4 years to make. We're talking about Klaus. Yes, I know it's a Christmas movie, but it's December already, so shut the fuck up. We're talking about Klaus.
For the record, we are indeed recording this in September for those listening in the future.
No, we are not. Don't even put. I will not be one of those people. No, I will not let somebody try and accuse me of being one of those people. I don't do that. But a quick summary of Klaus. It's a animated hour-and-a-half movie on Netflix. That's basically how it's a Santa Claus origin story without it really being about Christmas.
Yeah.
So if you watch it before Christmas, it's totally valid, and it doesn't make you one of those weird people who forgets Halloween exists. So don't come at me. Noah, what did you think about it?
Oh my gosh, this was beautiful. This is a beautiful, beautiful movie. I could tell from the start that this was an animator's animated movie, if that makes any sense. Like, from the get-go, I was like, oh, this was a bunch of animators going full animator on this, just all over, from start to finish. From the background to the character design, to the motion, to the writing, to the sets, to, like, the story. Every, like, drop of this was an animator's just absolute fantasy going all out, being, like, full animator. I mean, like, with the possible exception of a focus on naturalistic animation, this was really running the gamut of all the things that animators love to play with.
Now, how many times did he say animator in that short description?
I'm sure we'll like do like a CinemaSins ding every time I do it in like the video version of this.
Oh no, I'm just gonna probably put a counter at the bottom. So you are completely right. It was like an animator's dream, like passion project to work on. Because if you checked, so right after the movie came out, I immediately hopped on social media because that's the kind of trash I am, and I got involved in the fandom immediately. And the animators for the project just went ham discussing it. They were so into talking about every aspect of this project. So I have a quick question for you. And knowing your history with art and such, I'm sure you could tell. But do you think this movie was a 2D movie or a 3D movie?
Well, you know, if I had been asked that, having not seen actually like a year ago behind the scenes in progress stuff, I would have sworn to you this was a movie that had to have been constructed using the newfangled 2.5D technology that they've been developing for television. But having actually seen some of the in progress stuff, this is 2D animated with some wizardry on the coloration process. I can't fathom the wizardry there.
Okay, cheater. All right, I see you.
Like you said, I was in art school. I was hanging out with animators half the time. I heard about this movie. Everybody loved this movie. I saw some stuff about this movie. That's why I was so interested to see what was going on here. Otherwise, I'd probably have been suspicious.
Then why did it take you a year to watch it?
I don't know. I'm very slow to watch the things that I should watch. That's like half of the point why we have this podcast, is to get me to see the things that I really ought to have seen already.
You really are so far behind. It's going to take a lot of work on this podcast's part to get you caught up. But
there's a lot I didn't catch.
What do you want to talk about first?
Okay, so like, I guess we'll just go like loosely chronologically through the movie in terms of like things that occurred to me as like bullet points. So like y'all,
we could try that, but we probably aren't going to stay on that.
I mean, I'm going to shoot for it. I'm going to see how well it goes down. And I'll keep in mind that you have every intention of being a cat that refuses to be herded.
When am I not, though? When am I not, though? I thought you called me a cad, not a cat. I'm like, what the fuck is with these ancient insults here?
I love the idea.
You're fun at me.
You're just like just more shocked at the thought that I've called you a cad than I started like comparing you to a cat that cannot be herded. Like, it was really the old timiness of the insult.
Because that's a completely valid description of me. I am, and I cannot be. But I appreciate you trying.
Okay. So like at the start of the movie, for those of you that haven't seen it, we open up on like the postman training like boot camp that also doubles as like a massive mail facility. We see like all the postmen doing their postman things, passing letters about. The intro tells us that this one letter that they're passing around is where like the whole like sending letters to Santa thing started. And we're just following that letter until it eventually works its way into the hands of a carrier who drags it on over to the person it's for. It's our main character. Things happen. Turns out he's a bum.
Shocking.
He goes on assignment, and it's when our bum
I
main
have to fix my
character
camera. Ignore it.
when our bum main character is sent off on his mission to go to, you know, who knows where in the middle of nowhere, North Europe, was the moment that I was like, hey, I had some inklings earlier in that montage in the mailroom that this felt kind of Emperor's New Groovy, but now that I see this background art in the montage, holy cow, powerful Emperor's New Groove vibes coming off of this movie, and it just kept coming. Like every turn, it's like, oh, this is just like Santa's New Groove.
It
This
never
movie.
stops.
That was the whole.
And it literally never stops.
It's just a continuing motif, and this was before I remembered that Santa is a character in this. I was like, oh, it's like Klaus. Klaus must be the main character. It must be like about sending letters to Santa. Some tangentially Christmas thing. No, Santa's in this movie. He's very much a pacha to our main character. What's his name, Taylor?
Jesper. His name is Jesper. Some people mistake it for Jasper, but it is Jes. It's Jesper. I promise. I looked it up.
Jesper and the titular Klaus are very much a Pacha and Cusco duo, right down to Jesper's main character arc being that he needs to let go of like the life of luxury that he's been leading, and like find connection and value in himself, in like the family and friends that he surrounds himself with. Like it's very much that movie. But before I even got to that point, I was like, oh, this is very Emperor's New Groove, just in terms of like the art style and the way that they were characterizing things and the stylism and the background art, which is epic and shows these beautiful like snow-covered vistas at every turn. Like, you know, every time there's a travel montage, there's a long shot, and it is just some stunning painting work that is being done on the part of these background designers. It really helps you capture this sort of that Arctic grandeur. You know what I'm talking about? That like the stunning winter landscapes that you get in this sort of region of the world that it's set in. It's beautiful, and it sets the scene so well for sort of the general like environment of the story to come.
Honestly, the settings and background stuff is my favorite part of the whole movie. Yes, I love the characters. I have plenty to say about them, but just literally the design of all the detail that goes into the background, I absolutely adore. I have to say the only other movie I've watched where I've really enjoyed just looking at the background and what was happening in it would be, that's a Christmas movie, would be the claymation Santa Claus one. Because I have no defense of it. I just really did enjoy that too. But they're so gorgeous, especially when you go and you see Klaus and Jesper visit the Sami people, and just that whole journey to them. And it's just so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. All the birdhouses and the trees. It's so gorgeous. If you look at the concept art and then you look at the final product, it's so beautiful. I love it. I don't know a lot about like art and animation, so I can't really speak to the technical skills. All I can just do is stare in awe and be like, amazing.
Oh man, I think my favorite part about those birdhouses was just looking at them and being like, I bet that they just sat the prop designers down and be like, okay, you have like 30 minutes in Blender to design a birdhouse. Make a dozen of those.
That's so mean.
Each of you dozen interns make a dozen of those birdhouses.
To be fair, in the concept art, if I'm remembering it correctly, the birdhouses each had a little bit of a style to them, and they kind of lost that in the final product. But dude, they had to animate so many more. It was unreal.
Yeah, man. it's just such a
It's that's valid. That's valid.
it's such a beautiful movie. And at the risk of starting to jump onto like another of my big overarching feelings with the movie, it's in a tonally unique place, especially for what is like unambiguously a Christmas movie. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's I hate the discourse around any sort of media where it's like it's the X for people that hate X, or it's X that surpasses X. It's like it's a transcendent X. If it's horror, if it's video games, if it's like I don't romantic fiction, like I don't care what it is that you hate, but want to make room for this one version of it that you like. Like, uh, in this case, this is a Christmas movie that it does genuinely not feel like other Christmas movies, and I don't mean that to deride other Christmas movies, but I guess in some way I
Oh,
kind of do, but
I
we'll
thought
get into that. Suffice it to say,
I thought you were coming to criticize me because I have a rule where I won't watch Christmas movies before December begins, but I do genuinely start watching Klaus sometimes from the end of September until the end of February. So I thought you were coming at me, which is why I couldn't look you in the eye for a moment there, because that is exactly what this movie is for me. It's a Christmas movie that doesn't feel like a tacky Christmas movie, because I don't really like those.
that's sort of the thing. I think that I don't mean this as a dig against other Christmas media, because like I was saying, I don't like the discourse where it's like this is a horror movie for people that don't like horror movies, or that it like is a transcendent sort of horror movie, so anybody can watch it. But I think it's sort of a special case when it comes to Christmas media, because so much of classic Christmas media is popular for reasons that are not immediately directly connected to its quality, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of classic Christmas movies are classic because they weren't popular when they were released, and therefore they were cheap enough to run on TV every year until they became a traditional Christmas movie. Something that sort of stands on the weight of being a family tradition. And that's not valid. For whatever reason you love media, the mechanics that pushed you into the position to love it, I don't think can invalidate the fact that you love that media. So like if you love all the stop motion, like
I was about to say, like, Noah, I get it. You have a point. We may only enjoy these things because we saw them every year, but you don't understand. Like, Grandma Got Ran Over by a Reindeer is one of my favorite Christmas movies of all fucking time. And was the only one that, like, my grandma didn't already have on VHS. All the claymation stuff my grandma got in, like, a collector's edition bundle. So all that claymation ones I grew up with because we had them on VHS and watched them every single year. But Grandma Got Ran Over by a Reindeer was like a Cartoon Network special.
And like I'm saying,
and I love it.
That love is not invalid. Whatever reasons you may have, whatever reasons that got onto your television as a kid every year, that is your love for it is valid. Cherish it and run with it. I guess what I feel that makes Klaus distinct for me is that I'm connecting with it on a level that is independent of any sense of like tradition, or like having seen it a bunch, or knowing that it is renowned as part of the Christmas canon. And I feel that since for some of the other Netflix Christmas stuff too, I've just recently watched the Christmas Chronicles stuff, and that's much more in vein with like classic Christmas special stuff. Like it's very intensely of that ilk. And I think
I haven't watched it because it looks really tacky, so I just haven't bothered with it yet.
It depends
I'll
on what
probably
you feel
have
about...
to before Christmas is up.
I mean, if you like...
No.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have to.
If you like that vein of like Christmas stuff that, comes from that same tonal region, if you're a big fan of like the Tim Allen Santa Claus movies, if you like sort of the post stop motion Christmas specials that sort of start to like, as much as a Christmas special can, sort of reflect on other, like on the reinvent sort of Christmasness and the Santa canon. Like if you're a fan of that sort of 2000s-ish sort of vibe, Christmas Chronicles is for you, especially if you're also a fan of like The Star and his partner, because they're both fun. They're having a great time. Like, clearly they are just spending a bunch of money to just spend the next couple of years cosplaying as Santa and Mrs. Claus. All power to them. Klaus is not that kind of movie. Klaus
isn't that kind of movie at all.
Klaus is Klaus. It is about like Santa, and it is a Santa origin story, and has a great montage where they establish where a lot of like common Santa tropes come from, which is just a staple of this sort of reinventing Santa origin story movie. Like, everybody likes to do it. You know, it's a fun thing to do, either to reference it if you're not explicitly going the magical route, or to try and explain it if you're going the magical route, or in the case of Klaus, explain it and still not go the magical route. It's
that montage on point though.
Oh my gosh, so excellent. Just like Jesper going around and being like half the explanation for all the magical things Santa can do. Like, yeah, he can fit it in a chimney because he's tiny, because he's not Klaus, he's Jesper. He's a tiny boy.
He's a fucking stick of a man. He is a stick of a man even compared to his father. He's just a fucking twig.
Bad kids getting coal? That's just Jesper trying to own the kid that was a bully to him. Because Jesper's kind of like a sociopath a little. Just a little.
Listen, is he a sociopath or is he just petty? Because honestly, I relate to that on a pettiness level.
That's a powerful pettiness. And that's another thing too.
Powerful pettiness.
There's a core of kind of unpleasantness of like greed and spite to Jesper throughout like 3/4 of the movie. You see it melt away, absolutely, but it's there. And it really only goes away just a bit before everyone realizes his sort of greedy motive. The reason that he's come to this town and is trying to like get kids to write letters to Santa Klaus, the titular Klaus, is because he's been given the objective to mail 6,000 letters in a single year, or packages, because he gets the kids' letters and then he delivers the package and it's a twofer. At least that's how I think the numbers run out. So that's like his initial motive, and that's why he's trying to like spread the rumors about Klaus and get the kids to talk about it. That's why he's sending kids off to school to learn how to write so they can write letters. Like, he's accidentally promoting literacy, getting the kids happier, bringing up a culture of like kindness and empathy.
Okay.
For the sole purpose of getting kids to write letters.
He's not accidentally promoting literacy. He knew exactly what the fuck he was doing. He even had a plan in place for when when the teacher Alva would undoubtedly get mad at him. He totally planned the literacy part of it. He just didn't expect good things to start happening in the town because of it.
Okay, he selfishly promoted literacy for children, which is not a thing I knew you could do. Selfishly promote literacy.
Oh yeah.
Fascinating. Hey, Alva, let's talk about her.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about Alva. I love her. Let's talk about Alva. What do you want to talk about when it comes to Alva?
Okay, you know when I was talking about this being the animator's movie, like the most animator movie that ever animated, Alva's shop, when it's a fish shop before it's a school again, that is peak like contemporary animator. Like, the idea of a fish marketplace that used to be a school but is operated by a teacher that has given up and is just saving to get out of town. The way they visually represent that, all like the cute jokes in the background, like how she's using the chalkboard as like a place to like keep track of prices and, you know, inventory, all the fish hanging everywhere, the knives stuck in the globe. Like, all these are cute little visual details that I can just picture the animators gushing over in the pre-planning stage.
Literally, okay, so the fish market, the school turned into a fish market, gave the movie a completely different feel to what we had already seen. And so it kind of surprised me, and I was wondering, where the hell is this movie going with this? But it was so gorgeous to look at. And as she cuts open the fish that's right in front of her, and that's how you get the view of Jesper for the first time, it was so well done. Oh, that's one of my favorite, like, I don't even know what kind of scene you would describe that as. It's because it's not a cutaway, but yes, it's one of my favorite like character introduction moments. It's just, I really like Mogan's introduction too, though it does not take as much it doesn't take as much animation to introduce him in the way he is introduced. But I really do enjoy Mogan's as well.
I think I very much responded to the scene of Alva getting the fish. My note here explicitly says very excited about the way this woman removes spines. There was something very powerful about her ripping the spine out of a fish and looking at him. I was like, oh, well,
So
hello
powerful.
there.
It was so good. Just, okay.
I got very.
I only have
Ooh.
two complaints. I only have two complaints about this movie, and one of them does involve Alva, but it's not because of Alva. All right, Alva, that introduction, just how she doesn't relent throughout the whole movie. She never changes her personality, even when like she gets friendly with the other characters, and I really appreciate that because usually when like you have a side female kind of main character who's going to hold some kind of importance. If she starts off as rude and with like a really specific kind of personality, as she grows friendly with the main character, she typically loses that for a softer edge. But Alva doesn't. She's just like, nah, this is who I am. What the fuck did you expect? I love her.
She's just such a great point.
She's such a wonderful highlight of the movie.
Oh man, she's so bright, such a bright point.
Like, I didn't know, like, I wasn't sure what her point was going to be. I was worried that she was going to be just like a throwaway character. Oh, here's this really cool person who's not related to either of the like Montelaires, or I don't remember the Romeo and Juliet names for the characters, but like not part of any of the either of the clans, and the only other character besides Jesper and Mogans who we know who is like that and isn't on either side of the clans, and just I was really worried she was just there as background and she wasn't going to get to do anything at all. And then they totally didn't forget. They totally didn't forget that, hey, there was a point to her.
I really I like how she stays sort of through there in the background as part of as this like actual genuine character. She's sort of like what Jesper is supposed to be, like someone who is here altruistically. Like the way he's selling himself to Klaus as someone that is here to actually try and promote like, you know, happiness and benefit the kids. She's there sort of remind you, hey, this is what a good person looks like. Here's somebody that actually cares about the town, that is also an outsider, that wants to see things come for the better, and she's living her best life. Like, she is actually doing all the things. She mirrors his arc. She's getting attached to the town. She lets go of her motive to try and get out of here. Like, she hits all of his beats hour ahead of him.
And, like, the movie doesn't give her the same bitterness it gives Jesper because she doesn't deserve it. And I'm going to drive that point home. Yes, she goes through a paralleling character arc, but she had already tried to do it once and wasn't able to. The moment she has the ability to actually go through with it, she does, without a doubt. She is on there. And, like, the movie rewards her for that. You're allowed to look at her in a positive light. And she's never once seen as a villain to make Jesper look better.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you have side characters who have a parallel arc, but as soon as they're doing like better than the main character, they're typically thrown under the bus for the main character to get a glow up. And Alva doesn't get that, and I'm so happy. It's so I know I talk about like being a woman a lot when we do these podcasts and like how things are kind of like blatantly sexist, but like this whole movie wasn't, and I really enjoy it. It's like I just love it. I love it so much. Alba was so good. It made me, even though she wasn't like the main point of the show, I never once felt mad or bitter at how the movie was treating her.
I had a bit of like, yeah.
Go ahead.
I had a bit of like anxiety when I first saw like the first inklings of like, oh no, They're doing romance. Don't get this
Oh
heterosexual in
yeah.
here. I don't need that. You don't need to put that in there. And then it kept going, and like before like the liar revealed moment when like Jesper has gotten to the point where he might not realize it consciously, but he is definitely sort of already take like he's at least acting as if he has chosen the village over his like earlier aspirations, or at least the village has blinded him to like his earlier like
Yeah.
issues and damage. He's very much on board with helping people. They come from the same sort of stock. They've got a lot in common. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of on board with it. If they're both like these altruistic people, they're outsiders to the town that also care about it and trying to, do their part to help the community, come into its own. And I was like, it does kind of work, doesn't it? Especially like after the lie revealed, when the whole plot is resolved, you're like, yeah, I can see these two getting old together, I guess.
So that is one of my two complaints about the show. And it is the romance. Because while the romance does work and it does make sense for the two of them to get together, I didn't want them to. And it's not because Klaus is right there. It's not because of Klaus. It's just because Alpha is such a strong character on her own, and I wanted her to stay a strong character on her own. And I know that's kind of like awful because she's still a strong character even if she gets with Jesper. But I don't think Jesper deserves
Oh
her
yeah.
by the time the movie's over. I just don't think he does. And I get it because like it has to show him growing. It's not a romantic movie, so it's not going to focus more on him like earning her or like becoming good enough for her. So we got to take what we got. And I do appreciate the whole more them working together to figure out what Morgu is asking for so they can give her her gift and whatnot. But I just didn't want them to get together. I wanted Alva to stay on her own and to just fucking keep owning him.
I have to absolutely agree. I definitely felt like that scene sort of carried the weight of all the romance. That's sort of what had to make it believable. Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's good with kids, and he's clearly going out of his way to help her. Like, you as an audience member know that this is a sign that he fully believes in the town and his mission to help the town, not his mission to get X number of letters.
Yeah.
You as an audience member realize this marks a shifting point in the hidden part of his character. And for her, this scene indicates, oh, yeah, he is for real.
He's not completely trash.
He actually like is empathetic and will take care of kids and will work late into the night to try and help a kid with her letter to Klaus.
Even though the way he kind of initiates it is kind of shitty. Because in the scene where he takes Morgu to Alva's house to figure out what she's trying to say, he refers to Morgu as it after treating her as just a soundboard the entire movie up until that point. So that does mark like a character change in him and to show like how empathetic he can be and how much he has grown. I don't appreciate him calling the small child an it, and I don't appreciate him having ignored her up until that point. But how he treats her afterwards is so good, though. It's so good. And Morgu cares so
Oh
much.
my
And, like, she
gosh.
deserves that sled.
Margu
Ah.
Margu is
Again,
just
it's like, you're not supposed to like him. You're not supposed to like him. And the movie doesn't make you feel bad for not liking him.
Oh, absolutely. He is a jerk through and through until like I said, he has a lot of potential for kindness and clearly is making the right decisions towards the last half of the movie, but he's still got an underlying layer that of jerkiness that needs to get like directly confronted and resolved, and doesn't really until his dad returns to be like, "Hey, you did the job. You want to come back home?" And then, he has to be like, "No, actually, I I don't want to go back to the soulless, empty
Mogan's helped
existence."
that out. Mogan's helped that out, though. You can't, like, his father didn't even, like, really notice he was upset until Mogan's is like, well, I'm sure that won't grow into any, like, lasting resentment that will put a dink in your foundation of your relationship with each other forever. Mogan's is so on point.
Mogan, like, I love that man so much. excellent character. Felt like he stepped right out of like Atlantis, the Lost Empire. I got that sort of vibe off of him.
Yes!
I'm like, I don't know who
Yes!
you're supposed to be from that movie, but you're very much a character from that movie. From that
I
point of
don't
early
know.
2000s Disney animation.
Like, you would fit in perfectly with that crew, and I can already imagine who your best friends would be and who you wouldn't get along with, and I want to see you hang out with them.
Okay, but like, you could write that fan fiction. They did spend a lot of time in Northern Europe before the movie started, you'll recall.
I also want to point out how in the second movie, which was straight to VHS, they do spend a lot of time in the Arctic
That is absolutely true.
because of Zeus or whatever he was supposed to
Odin.
be.
Odin, I
Odin,
think it
Odin,
was.
yes, he was supposed to be Odin.
Oh my goodness. That whole franchise. I want to be in charge of the rewrite of the remake of that one cuz I've got like ideas about Milo's character and how we can improve it cuz like there's a whole underlying arc about colonialism and his we'll talk about this later.
I do just want to say Kida was one of the best Disney princesses ever, and it's tragic that she doesn't get counted in the lineup. But moving on. This isn't an Atlantis episode.
This is not an Atlantis
is
episode.
a Klaus episode.
Uh
This is a Klaus episode.
Joan Cusack's character,
So,
solid gold because it's Joan Cusack. Duh.
okay, I don't know actors' names, so be more specific.
The woman who's in charge of one of the McCoy Capulets, whatever.
Ah, okay.
The Hatfield
Yeah. All right.
Montagues.
Yes.
Jesse from Toy
The
Story 2.
Addams- I was gonna say the Addams family if they were horrible people.
How dare you? How dare you say that? We don't sass
just
the Adamses in this pod.
I'm not sassing them. It's just the same Addams aesthetic to the point where like, yeah, her clan has a bunch of taller people who are really lean and just hover over everyone.
Oh boy. Let's see. Besides,
That,
it's fair. It's fair.
okay, so we haven't talked about Klaus yet, but we talked about every other character.
Oh my
so
gosh.
how
Okay,
do you
yeah. Let's get
feel
to Klaus. Let's
about
get to Klaus then. Let's see. One of my first notes here. I heart serial killer Santa. Let's see here. Woodsman equals Santa is a twist I didn't see coming. I totally forgot that Santa was in this movie.
The movie took so long to get to him, you forgot he existed. Okay,
yeah.
so question on that real quick. So one of the complaints that I have seen about this movie is how it takes a long time to get the Klaus himself. Klaus, to get the Klaus himself. So, did you think that worked in favor of the movie or that it worked against it?
I mean, I think it certainly helps. If you are going into this expecting something that is much more in the vein of like a quote unquote traditional sort of Christmas movie, like Christmas is a genre of fiction, like, yeah, I think that it would feel like a long time, but I think it's important to like convey to people, hey, this is tonally going to be very different from what you're used to. This is like content wise, this is like theme and subject matter wise, and just imagery wise, this is going to be very different from what you're expecting. There is a lot of Christmas stuff here, but this is like, I don't know, like if Santa Claus is a comic book character, this is like the early 2000s superhero adaptations of that character. Like, there are a lot of elements we're picking up from it, but we're also throwing a lot away in favor of like darker colors, more grounded characters, a lot less fantasy elements, a lot more focus on, you know, character story and like general environmental mood. And also we have some great actors hired. For example,
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
and only
Dude, yeah. Say it already.
I've forgotten his name. I want to say Tenzin J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh my. I I think so. It's the dude from Spider-Man. It's the dude who yells at Spider-Man the whole time and calls him a menace to
I'm so
society.
sorry. I'm so sorry. We've both forgotten his name.
I'm not good with actors' names. Why would you try and go
Oh
there?
my gosh.
If it's not like, if it's not one of the big ones I grew up with, I'm not gonna remember. Like Dave Chappelle, I know.
Oh my
Patton
goodness.
Oswalt, I know. I don't know who. I don't know this name.
J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. Okay,
I'll
we're
edit it.
so
So
sorry, J.K. Simmons.
we stand J.K. Simmons,
Okay,
who is excellent as
we do.
as serial killer Santa, as the 2D version of Santa from the
Serial
Guardians.
killer. Stop calling him that. Okay, but honestly, though, I do want to talk about that, but later. For now, continue on with your notes on Klaus, because I personally feel like taking forever to get to him helped the movie set up. You get a lot of world building in the background, especially with like how the postman off boot camp looks and the city it's in, and like how it's considered one of the better jobs that like it takes a lot of training for you to do well, apparently. It's almost like this whole world has an army department just for postmen. But I feel like it works in the movie's favor to take forever to finally get to him.
Yeah, it definitely
And I
helps
just want to
set.
know that.
I totally agree that it makes sense for this story to like, because this is it's a slow burn to Christmas. Like the word Christmas doesn't even get dropped until like halfway through the second act. Like,
Oh, yeah. No. It's completely forgets about it until it's like, you know what we should do? You should make more toys for Christmas.
and
I was kind of surprised to see that Christmas was already a thing in the world before they brought that up, because I thought they were going to be creating it with how the movie was going.
this isn't that secular a movie, although it is like super secular. Like, I mean, if you're gonna, it has to be kind of, if you're gonna set a Santa origin story that isn't in the Mediterranean, like you have to be very, very secular with this sort of thing. And this is like,
Yeah.
this is intensely so. I mean, the only comparison I can think of to this kind of high level Santa Claus origin story are like the live action Santa Claus movie that I never saw that came out in the 80s that was directed by the same guy that did Superman, and of course the stop motion one.
I don't know which live action ones you're talking about. There's so many live action ones, you gotta be more
Well,
specific.
the Tim Allen ones don't really ever go into the origin of Santa as an entity. They're just like Santa is an ongoing like thing. I'm thinking it's
Yeah.
just called Santa Claus, and it was from like the 70s, early 80s, directed by Richard Donner. It was I've only heard like seen bits and
I'll
pieces. It's very odd, but I hear it's worth the watch if you're into that sort of thing.
send me like, I don't know, send me something about it later, because I may know of it, but I have no idea because I've seen so many old live action Santa Claus movies.
Anyway, like we keep saying over and over again, this is a very this is a take that I think if we broke it down into the pieces actually isn't that different, but it definitely feels that different, especially because just
Yeah.
how many like layers of difference between the two. Santa isn't the main character; it's kind of a jerk that's the main character. You know, all these Santa traditions spring up
He,
in a way that isn't really based on reality, that is based on a falsified perception, but they still show how the legends sort of begin. Also has a tragic backstory, TMCR.
oh yeah, it has. I was about to say it actually has like a dead Mrs. Klaus before you even get to like meet Santa, and that was really great. I really like that because there's, while it doesn't use magic to explain how all the like motifs of Santa Claus comes up in the movie, there is a magical element to it, and it's specifically over Klaus's dead wife,
Mm-hmm.
where the magic comes in, and that's really all the magic is used for. It's used for Klaus when he's directly like doing something, paying homage to his dead wife, or thinking about her, or drawing similarities between her and Jesper.
it's sort of like it's visually represented as this like loose wintry breeze that comes in
Yeah.
and will, indicate stuff to him. It's sort of there, I think, to toe the line between, is this magic? Is this him sort of just perceiving his wife and the elements around him? It wants to play with a bit of ambiguity, just a bit, but it also is like the
Yeah.
wind is passing him a letter. The wind is like indicating where Jesper is. It's very clearly it wants you to be like, okay, there's something going on here that isn't, as grounded as
Yeah.
everything else.
I would actually argue that it stays. I would actually argue it stays pretty ambiguous and like allows you to keep thinking that maybe it's magic,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not, up until the very end where Klaus walks into it and disappears behind a tree.
Yeah.
And then it's just a big gust of wind that wasn't there before. It's pretty ambiguous, and you can say if it's magic or just him seeing things because he's mourning and this is how he's coped with being alone. Up until that moment. That moment confirms it's pretty much magic. It was magic the whole, not maybe the whole time, but a lot of it was. The swirling behind Jesper was definitely probably the magic.
And even with that last scene, it still manages to like retroactively give you just a slight hint that maybe there's a bit of abstraction and stylism going on here. Because, like you said, his perception of it, you can sort of think, is this sort of just how he tries to perceive the wheels of his wife from beyond the grave? Just because he's trying to keep that connection alive. When he's gone, when he gets gusted away from behind a tree, after that, we get Jesper, who's like 12 years older, because this is, in the future after they've been doing Christmas for a long time.
Yeah.
It goes around and he talks about, hey, I went everywhere. I talked to literally everybody around town. I went all the way to the Sami people. I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find any trace of them. It was like he had disappeared. And with that line, you sort of get this sort of like vibe, like, oh, were we getting like a stylistic representation of like that sort of sense of the legend? Like, because here we're hearing the legend afterwards, and were we getting something that was kind of sort of visualizing the same like emotional sense that this legend conveys? Obviously, I might be pushing the interpretation a bit, but there's definitely, it still introduces that just tiny inkling of like, we've spent this whole movie
Yeah.
seeing how legends can build around actual literal kind of grounded events, how senses ideas of magic can grow out of real things, and then they flip the script on you where they have an actual kind of magical thing happen, and then they give you a kind of grounded explanation. Like, it adds just that extra touch of ambiguity to an already kind of pretty much magical moment that I love.
Yes, that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, but I'm not gonna lie, I did not think they were going to go the magic aspect of it. When we see Jesper look around and he comes into the field and he sees nothing there, and you just see the shock on his face, I'm not gonna lie, I thought he had just found Klaus's body in like the snow, with snow buried like on top of half of him. And that's why we didn't see him on the other side of the tree, because he didn't make it past the tree. He was like buried underneath. So I was expecting a really grim end when they like said we did Christmas for 12 years and then he's gone, before like Jesper says, no, I was never able to find him. I'm like, oh, okay, we're not gonna see Santa's dead body. That's pretty good. I don't know why I went there, but I definitely went there. It was just like the shock on his face. I was just like, oh, fuck, he found him outside dead.
I mean, that was sort
I'm
of.
really happy he did it, though.
I'm sure I have some notes somewhere around here that are basically saying, don't make me watch Santa die, parentheses, but actually please do. I was very, because like that's the nail in the coffin. Bad phrasing. That would be the deciding moment. No Santa origin movie has the courage to kill Santa, and this one does. It's absolutely like.
One of my most popular posts on Tumblr ever is actually about this movie, and it's a fanfic I wrote right after watching it, and it was Jesper finding Klaus's body outside in the snow and having to bury him himself. So you're not the only one who like wanted to actually see them kill Santa.
I,
And like it's not in like a grim way, like, oh, we hate this fucker, he needs to die. It's like, no, this movie takes so many steps. I know wanted to see it go just a little bit more.
it has a gravitas, and you kind of want it to use it. It understands a poignancy, like that poignant element to is kind of at the core of it. That's why he has the tragic backstory TMCR. It sort of is like, yeah, he loves children. He always wanted to have kids. That's why he has this stockpile of toys lying around, because of him and his wife. But that just wasn't in the cards for him. He gets an up backstory in just the middle of the movie, and it hits you like, oh yeah, this is what would build this man. This is a man that is in mourning. This is a man that loves children genuinely and wholeheartedly, and like believes in people, but also has kind of been denied that, and is kind of an outsider to this town and doesn't want to interact with them because they are dark and ugly kind of right now, in a dark and ugly mood, to be clear. They're having, and we'll get to the town. But you
So
can, it provides a
this
good explanation, a good gravitas, and I think the ending is poignant and useful.
So it never actually goes into the explanation of why exactly Klaus does not interact with the other people in the town. And I have to question, is it because they're kind of dark and ugly right now, or is it because him and his wife were a part of the town and they left it because it was dark and ugly, and then he didn't have the courage to go back because people had like, they hadn't forgotten him because the kid knew his name without him even having to give it. So there's clearly legends about him going through town. He was obviously a part of it at some point. But he's become the standoffish figure that no one associates with. And it kind of made me wonder, was Santa Claus part of, like, one of the two clans? Was him and his wife part of one of the two clans? Because when we see a younger version of him, he kind of looks like he would be a part of the rivalry. Like, just how he's designed when he's younger.
I bet if we look, we would find more details that might support that. Maybe they had a Romeo Juliet thing going on, and that's why they were so far out in the woods.
It could have been.
Did she have red hair? I bet if we go back, we'll see, and that would probably take. I bet animators would shoot that. While you're googling that, I guess there's kind of one last point.
I'm literally.
I would like
how
to.
You know I'm googling it.
I can see you. I can see you typing. Okay. So there is one last point with regards to like the magic element, the magical wind element. Like, for all their play with ambiguity and the way that legends are constructed, they do seal it like with like, no, there is magic here at the very end, because this is a Santa origin movie, and you can't keep the Santa legend alive if you're just going to kill off Santa and have that be the end. We don't get to see him, but like the last line that Jesper says to us all these years later is, I don't know how it works. I don't know what happened, but all I do know is that every year, one night a year, I get to see my friend. And you hear jingle bells in the distance as he sits down on a couch on Christmas Eve late at night. And you're like, oh, Santa.
Yeah.
The reason Santa is so magical, and is so kind of powerful is that he is a ghost. He is like the remnant of this man who is nothing but goodwill and passion, and spent the last decade of his life trying to act on that with all the support of an entire town and an entire village on top of that. He was that sort of origin is radical. Like, Christmas and ghosts have an overlap thanks to Charles Dickens, but this takes it in an entirely new direction that is a radical reinvention and is super heartwarming, because you do it, like, this idea of Santa as this like haunting ghost, but like in a positive sense, is wonderful and powerful. And the idea that he's seeing his friend every year, that's heartwarming in a spectacular way that is beautiful outside of the context of Christmas, and in the context of it only amplifies it further.
I like how you say ghosts are tied to Christmas because of Charles Dickens, and not because of like how murky the legends have gotten between the Saint Nick himself and like the actual representation of Santa Claus.
You'd think that would be the origin.
I mean, Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens definitely had a hand in it, but I don't know if I would believe it's all because of him.
That's fair. But it's
just also because of like what time of year like Christmas lands on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's right after the realms between like the living and the dead are supposedly closer than normal, and it starts getting darker later. I'm pretty sure ghosts have always been like a part of legends around this time of year, and that got swept into it as well. But yeah, Charles Dickens did have a hand in it.
It's funny, you know, that connection to the historical Saint Nicholas, uh, as a human being, and then the connection to the supernatural entity Santa Claus. That's not a connection that like nobody ever tries to tie that knot with. Oh, but ghosts. I don't think anybody's done that take before, but it makes sense that, you know, as a hypothesis. But I've never seen that take in all like the Christian Christmassy media, the explicitly extra Christian. Even though Christmas is already a Christian holiday, we all know, right, that there's a distinction between Christmas and Christian Christmas, like Christmas, but with an extra bit of Christian.
Definitely a distinction.
There's a difference between the stop motion Santa Claus movies and the VeggieTales episode about the historical Saint Nicholas.
You really just gotta watch more like Christmas movies that aren't like overtly Christian Christmas movies.
Ah, man. Okay,
I couldn't find a picture of his wife online, so I'm literally like ghost get me through the movie right now.
Oh my goodness.
To find
her name is Lydia.
I did not know that.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so like talking about the characters for a moment real quick.
Yeah.
Because I'm the fandom one between the two of us, if we're being completely 100% honest. Who do you think was the character? Okay, so you know how like in most fandoms there's one character that people just thirst after?
Yeah.
Alright, and I get this is a children's animated movie, but who the fuck do you think that character was? Because it might surprise you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to think about this because there's some characters that I resonated with on a stupid lizard brain level, which I process as probably the level that the fandom reacts to most strongly. Because fandoms, you know, they like their strong personal lizard brain reactions. For example, the Onceler,
yes,
who, as we all know, was a fandom classic. Jesper kind of resembles him kind of sort of loosely, but I think he has more in common with Cusco, and I don't think that there are a lot of people lining up to stand Cusco as an individual entity.
And not really.
Yeah, so I don't think it's him.
Pacha has a big fandom now. Pacha has grown a following, though not as much as
He deserves it. But I don't think people are going to come in and be like thirsty for Santa. I think we got that out of our system as a country, as an internet, after Guardians. I think we got the thirsty Santa posting out of our system after that one. So I'm going to really shoot for the moon.
We're not going into that right now.
I'm not going to say it's Joan Cusack's character because I don't think that the internet is ready for that level of awesome yet. And I know that the internet is kind of always ready for the teacher, whose name, again, I forget, who gives a powerful...
Alva. Her name is Alva.
Alva, who gives off a powerful Megara from Hercules vibes.
Definitely.
I don't think it's her. I'm gonna shot in the dark here. I think it's Honey, the very large girl with red hair. I think it's Honey because that's who I resonated the most with. The very large girl with the bright red hair and the pigtails. The one that's like 20 feet tall.
No.
I think everybody loves Honey because Honey's awesome, and I would die for Honey. And I'm so glad that Honey found a nice boy.
No.
And got out from under her like abusive dad. Like, good for Honey.
That's fair.
Pumpkin. I'm sorry. Honey was the boy that she married. Good for Pumpkin.
No.
Very good for Pumpkin.
No, it wasn't
Pumpkin.
It wasn't Pumpkin. By thirst, I mean literally this was the character everybody was horny for, and it wasn't Honey or Pumpkin.
Okay. I mean who? Oh, really? The Boatman. No.
Oh yeah.
No. No.
Yes, it was
really?
Smokins. It was Smokins.
The Boatman.
Oh my gosh. It was Smokins. Like part of him on Tumblr, and then it got erased because Tumblr was still like trying to get rid of all that shit. Oh yeah, oh yeah, it was Mogan's.
I don't. You know what? I try to be as open-minded as I can. I try to really reach out there, see what the depths of my lizard brain can come up with, and still, I consider myself kind of a guy with some weird interests. I still cannot match fandom. I think I'm a weirdo
You want to know?
with bizarre interests.
Okay, but like, allow me to defend this real quick.
Yep, go ahead.
Personally, Mogan's wasn't even in my top like 5 characters. He was hilarious, but that was really it. But there was a audience of the movie who wanted more gays in the movie, and but they didn't want to ship Santa Claus with someone. So it was originally out of like, oh, look at this alternative gay coupling. Instead of Jesper and Klaus, you have fucking Mogans and Jesper, because he's the shithead who forces this dude to get over himself at the beginning and knocks him down a peg and helps him start on that journey of like becoming slightly better because, hey, guess what? You're not the center of the fucking universe. And then it turned into the whole, well, yeah, everybody's doing fluffy fan art of Jesper and Klaus, and of like Jesper and Alva, but where's the smutty fan art? And Mogan's was thrown right in there. And like, if you ask people, and like, I was in a couple different Klaus discords because I got invited because that fan fiction I wrote. And most people said it was either because of his attitude and how he was really sarcastic, because of his fucking ass, which you never see, and other people was just because he's that one character who's in there for a little bit but isn't connected to like any of the fluffy stuff in the movie, so you can do whatever you want with him. He was just thrown right in there.
He's Peter B. Parker by way of Atlantis. You know what? Every time we talk about fandom on this show, it always goes right into the X-rated zone, and they always like make me feel like a normal person. Like, how?
Dude,
I really. Dude. I look forward to plunging even further into the bowels of Tumblr with you as we do this show, because I still learn a lot. I'm still learning.
I don't even watch porn. And somehow I still see all this shit on my Tumblr dash. Despite the fact it's not supposed to have anything like that anymore.
So, I'm going to save us a little. We've started plunging into our last half hour here. So what are some burning topics that you want to do? Because I've got kind of like one last sort of big vine that we haven't touched on, but I want to see what you have to talk about since you're the host here.
There's 2 I really want to talk about, and it's Jesper and Klaus, because obviously, because you know I ship it, but also like the direct tie, like not direct, but like the really close tie-in to Rise of the Guardians this movie has. Those are the 2 I want to talk about, but we can go on yours last, big one first, because I will get sidetracked.
So we've touched on it a little, but and this is kind of like the least connected to the core of the movie of any of them, really, since it really only serves to like have like an explanation for the antagonizing forces of the movie, but the whole Hatfield, McCoy, Montague, Capulet conflict, the stereotypical this family versus this family. I had some like thoughts on this and how it like forms the basis for like the status quo of the town as Jesper enters, and also for how they like rally themselves to become the core antagonist by the 3rd act. Because when he enters, we don't get the full explanation that this is a Montague, Capulet, McCoy, Henry, whatever thing. Sexy Boatman just tells him, yeah, this town is like built on like grudges and feuds. So my kind of
Yeah.
takeaway, because we just constantly saw everybody fighting everybody else. I didn't. I maybe it's because I'm just not paying attention, but I didn't notice any like clear dividing indicators of appearance that would indicate that this is two different families fighting. I just like, oh, everybody hates each other because this is just a really old town, and culturally they just love holding grudges here. So everybody just has this kind of ambient aggression, which is why they battle in the middle of the street, just sort of willy nilly. I thought, okay, like, do I prefer this to the to the Capulet McCoy thing? Maybe I do, because at least it doesn't have like this singular explanation to try and explain an entire culture of a town. It's like, no, this town just like culturally, locally, they like hold on to grudges stronger, and that's just like that's why the conflict is here. The issue isn't like any individual action; it's just like a broader cultural
They've
issue.
been
And then
grudging
I
for so long.
and then I
They've
put that into words, broader cultural issue, and I was like, well, that sounds like a red flag, writing wise. Just a culture that has some problems with the way that it processes stuff. Like, that's a
well,
red flag. I'm not sure if I'm on board with that either.
okay, so yes, that is a writing red flag, and that's something that you can try and incorporate into whatever project you're writing, and then it turns out really bad really fast. But it's not a it's not because this is two different cultures clashing. It's because this is one culture of two different families who have literally chased each other around the world fighting, if you believe their history stories in the middle of the movie, when they're explaining to the children why there's a feud going on. Um, Really, it literally is just the Romeo Juliet thing put into a whole town is around this. And actually, when you look at the town visually, there are clear indications of like how you can separate them. The most obvious one being red hair is the one side, the part of the one family led by a man, and black hair is part of the one family led by a woman. And I do not remember those characters' names because I did not care about any of that. I just wanted Santa Claus to go have fun with Jesper. Um, but the hair color is the immediate distinction, which also, looking it up, it looks like both Klaus and his wife had dark hair, so maybe one of them was from the town and the other one wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But when you also look at the sketches and like the parallels between the characters and the town itself, for every person on one side of the family, there's a person on the other side that looks the opposite of them. So, like the little boy who loses his picture and gets the first gift from Klaus. His dad is super tall, very skinny, though not as skinny as Jesper, and like just an intimidating figure. Well, the little girl the boy plays with has a mother who is the exact opposite. Larger build, very wide. The only similarity between the two of them is the fact that both of them have a large nose. You
Mm-hmm.
also get this in the heads of the family as well, where they're the exact opposite of each other too, but their children look incredibly similar build-wise.
It's a,
And just like, even when you have the two families standing off, one of them gets a very specific look and the other one gets the exact opposite, besides one feature that typically gets shared between the two opposing characters. That's something I noticed my third time watching. I'm like, oh, so they actually like took a long time trying to say like, yes, these are two different families. Yes, there are ways you could tell who's on which side besides just hair color, but you really got to pay attention to the small details to notice it,
so my big like
because every character has an opposite.
my big sort of like mental debate I was having as like they were explaining it, and that sort of resolved when they got to like the third act, was like, so how do I feel about this trope? Because we see it a lot, like it pops up in animation, especially. They like to do this. They like drawing their opposite groups and having them huck things at each other, and the feud as a stereotype has sort of been a mainstay for a long time in English literature. I mean, we're referencing a real family, and then like literature based off of earlier stories when we're trying to describe this trope. Um, and I had some mixed feelings because, like, on the one hand, I was like, huh, what? I mean, what sort of is the point of a story about a conflict between two equally powerful entities that, like, just keep fighting? And I was like, I guess the only, like, what I realized was that the decision they made about how this all works is kind of the right, what felt to me like the only interesting way to go with this sort of feud, which is to make the point that the only reason the feud is continuing is because the people in charge like the feud because it's what keeps them in charge.
Yeah.
And that's literally what they do. The moment that Klaus and Jesper's efforts begin to, like, pretty quickly spread, like, peace, like, suddenly, like, it starts out like there's, like, feuding gift giving, like, back and forth. Like, first there's,
Yes.
like, one kid does a chore for
He
somebody
picked
else,
all the berries.
and then I picked all her berries, so she angrily made a bunch of jam, and then my mother angrily made her a cake, and they kept doing things angrily until we were inviting each other over for dinner. I loved that. That was adorable. That was I love the emotions
That
of
was
that.
cute.
That sort of, like, hatred devolving into spite, devolving into just, like, a modest competition, devolving into genuine, like, sort of friendship. I love the escalation, the escalation of, like, positive feelings and the way that that all sprung from one kind act, which is the moral of the movie. One, like, selfless, moral action is going to inevitably produce another. And, like, that was a great way to
The
visualize
quote is
that.
the quote is actually, one truly selfless act will always give way to another, but you could argue that the very first selfless act the whole movie is based around wasn't purely selfless. And again, you can also argue it absolutely was, because it was Klaus doing it, not Jesper. Jesper wasn't doing the first act. So,
It's all,
but yeah, it's a debate. It's like a philosophy debate, and this whole movie invokes it. And I constantly go back and forth on it while I watch it, because you could argue that Jesper did do the first act by going to Klaus, but Klaus is the one who, like, actually started gift giving and just forced Jesper along. So yeah, it's a whole thing.
maybe the point is that it doesn't have to be a selfless act. Maybe just, like, an act that is, like, that ultimately affects kindness can be enough sometimes.
I think that is the point the movie's trying to get across, but it's constantly repeated by Klaus in a very specific way. When purely selfless act gives way to another, like it is said several times over by him. But every time it's said, Jesper looks away, and it undercuts whatever he does next, because you know he's not being selfless, and that's the whole point. It's like, make him feel guilty. Which, by the way, that end where Jesper jumps in to try and save the gifts, and Klaus knowing that all the gifts are fake, just sitting there like, nice choice of words. Maybe someone should feel bad about themselves right now. Just tearing into him, knowing the gifts that are falling apart and being lost aren't real, and Jesper freaking out because, oh damn, he's so mad at me, he doesn't even care that we're losing gifts. I love it. I love that moment. That and the moment at, like, 35.30, I think it is, when they're on the sleigh and they just got all the reindeer connected. And they're, like, complimenting each other, and then they realize, oh, wait, we're guys. We're not supposed to be doing this. And so they both quickly look away, and Klaus just says, reindeer, good idea, sturdy, dependable choice. And he looks over to see if Jesper's looking back at him, and the moment Jesper does it, he's just like, oh, fuck. I love it. I love it. I love the small things like that, and all those characters' small movements.
Oh, man. I
I
guess
love
the
the
ultimate point I was
pettiness
coming to about the big, like, feud issue is that I felt like they had kind of, like I said, they had the only really good take that you can take away from this, which is, people in power are going to fight to stay in power. That's why they'll make a truce to stop peace from spreading.
Yeah. Make a truce to stop the peace from spreading, just to keep everyone else fighting, because it keeps the attention off of them.
Oh, boy. And they
which
say
is
it.
really
They say it. They explicitly
Yeah.
put that into words.
Yeah. That's exactly what government does too.
Yeah,
Government
exactly.
does the exact same thing.
That's exactly my point, because that is sort of like the like core, like I think the one big takeaway you can have from a feud story, which is, hey, feuds don't keep happening arbitrarily. You don't fight. Conflict isn't by its own nature endless. That doesn't happen. Like there,
Yeah.
it takes energy to fight, and it takes somebody there to ensure that that energy is keeps getting thrown on the fire. Kind of what this movie might suggest in that way then is that the natural state of people and culture, like it is more naturally inclined to peace and to like compassion, because it does, if you put in the effort, independent effort for selfless acts is uh at, causes a chain reaction that gives individual power to the people, that allows them to rise up over the bourgeois.
I was about to say, where are you going with
The
this? What word are you
bourgeoisie
going to
will
say
be
next?
overthrown by the power of the selfless kindness of the proletariat. Uh, Klaus is actually a communist movie,
I
kids.
I was actually just going to say it literally gives an answer to the force paradox. What will win? A spear that can pierce anything, or a spear that can never be stopped, versus a shield that can never be pierced, or a shield that can never be broken? What would win? And like, this movie gives an answer. Neither wins, because eventually the people wielding them just won't have the energy to wield them anymore, and they just won't go against each other anymore.
It's solid. It's solid. It's a
It's
solid
solid.
core. So,
Okay.
what are those last two things that you wanted to talk about?
All right. I don't remember one of them, but oh yes, I do. So, yeah, I kind of already brought it up. All the small moments between like Jesper and Klaus were very great. I loved them. I adored every single one of them. I totally ship it, and they're adorable. But that wasn't the point. But it's where I'm going to stop on that because I can't remember the real point. So, Rise of the Guardians.
Okay.
We need to talk. We need to talk about Rise of the Guardians in this movie for
I've
like
definitely seen that
a
since
hot
the
minute.
Obama administration.
What?
I've definitely seen that
No.
movie since early high school.
How can you not? You don't watch it every year?
I
It's
watched
not
it
even a
once
Christmas movie.
in like 2013, maybe
Oh,
12.
you're breaking my heart here. I love Rise of the Guardians. I don't really like the main character in it, but I like everyone
You're
else.
not that that
I
kind of Tumblr girl.
No, I thought Jack and Pitch were really boring designs for the concepts that they were supposed to be based off of, when everyone else had really fun designs and seemed really unique, and they just seemed like, oh, these are the pretty boys we shoved into a show to sell things. But my point is, so uh this movie basically ties in Santa Claus um from this movie to the Santa Claus from Rise of the Guardians. And while like Santa Claus in Rise of the Guardians is Russian and like really really out there and really ready to get down with murder, it's that's not what ties it together. It's not the fact that the Santa Clauses are similar. It's the fact that they share kind of an interesting beginning. Because in Rise of the Guardians, the moon chooses who the Guardians are going to be and what they protect. And literally, what Santa Claus in that movie is supposed to protect, I think it's like childhood dreams or something like that. It's basically what Klaus is giving the entire time. He's giving these kids good memories. He's helping the children feel like good things will happen no matter who they are. Like, he basically just carries that whole message that Santa Claus was supposed to represent in Rise of the Guardians, and then does it, and then with the whole him just completely disappearing and then coming around once a year, just ties in so well with the whole like, oh, the moon chose the guardian, the moon chose you, you are now doing this task forever for the rest of your immortality.
Not to mention the
I
idea
thought that was
of
really
these
cool.
like entities being ghosts. That
Yeah.
also makes an appearance here.
Yeah, it does. Okay, I actually have to like look it up what Santa Claus. Hang on. No, I don't want to know his whole fucking history. I don't care about his history. I just want to know one thing. What is he the guardian of?
I mean,
Oh, Guardian of Wonder. So he's the
uh,
Guardian of Wonder, and you could say this whole movie is about Klaus, like just memorizing people of how wonderful he is and everything he does, which is perfect.
I mean, like I said earlier, my main overlap of connection between the two was explicitly their visual design, which does undeniably bear a striking resemblance to one another. Big, buff, axe-wielding Santa is, not a common motif, and they don't go like full biker
No,
dad like they did in Guardians. He is a woodsman first
no.
and foremost. That's why he's got the build, and he's like standoffish to the extreme. That's why he's so like gruff seeming, but he's doesn't have that like loud personality of the Guardian Santa. There's like elements of their characterization, like you said, that distinguish them. It's that kind of that core, that idea that they are all tied into the sense of childlike wonder, or just a sense of love or protection for children, something like that, as like a core of their character is definitely to that in that extent is what unifies them as characters. But I would argue it's their visual design that's their strongest connection, like most explicit. But
That's fair. I didn't really pay attention to the visual design
how? It's an
because
animated
that's
movie.
not okay. Yes, but I was so busy trying to figure out like all the other small stuff that was happening in the background and with the families that I did not really focus on Santa's design much.
He's one of the two main
There was so
characters.
I know, and they were cute, and I enjoyed them together.
Oh my goodness.
But like, I
Oh
was
my
busy
goodness.
trying to decode. I was busy trying to decode all the references that are put in like the background, especially when you go through like the history of the two families. There are so many references just thrown in there, and I was so busy on those I didn't even think about Santa Claus
You got
until he got that red outfit. So he got the red outfit. He's like, does this look good on me? Is it too much red? Should I not wear it? And then Jesper's just like, hang on, buddy. I got you. You look good.
Ah.
That's when I started focusing in on that part.
It's such a good time. It's such a good time, this movie. It's just a good
Good
time.
movie. It's so good. So, like, one of my other concerns with the movie, it's not really a complaint, but it is a concern, is how it approaches the indigenous people that are included in it, the
Yeah.
Sami. They never get their language actually like not deciphered but like translated
Mm-hmm.
in the subtitles or anything, so you never have any idea what they're saying. And that's not my issue. My issue is how where Jesper was the elf or elves at the beginning, the Sami people kind of replaced him as them. And I'm not sure how I feel about indigenous people being turned into like magical creatures that aren't supposed to exist
Yeah.
in the middle of a kids movie. And even though it doesn't explicitly do that, it still alludes to like, oh yeah, these are where his helpers come from. And I was fine with it when it was just Jesper, but I don't know how I feel about them putting indigenous culture into that role, very specifically that. I don't know enough about the Sami people to really give a history to like figure out if this is actually offensive or not. But that's something that like stood out to me and made me wonder. Okay.
I had that same feeling.
I do. Yeah.
I have a note right here that says basically the same thing. Like, I don't love the native population equaling the elves.
Also,
I get vibes here.
also the fact that Morgu can only travel back home during certain points when the ice is like thick enough also concerns me because she's traveling this huge long journey we see Klaus and Jesper take Klaus, Klaus and Jesper take together, and it takes them forever. And she's just doing it alone constantly, basically sleeping on Jesper's front step until he finally decides to pay attention to her. And like, I wasn't concerned about her until we see Jesper and Klaus do the same exact journey. Then I got real concerned for her. Like, where has she been sleeping? Because she isn't like outside of his house 24 hours of the day. So where is she sleeping? Does she have some? I'm so concerned about the baby girl.
Maybe her.
I'm so concerned about her.
Her family, like, I was doing the slightest bit of reading, and apparently, like, one of the biggest, like, trades among the Sami people is a nomadic sort of reindeer herding. Maybe that's why all the reindeer are in town. Maybe, like, that's part of a herd that they've been following.
Oh, that could be. That could be.
A shot in the dark.
I don't know. I don't know enough to, like, say that. I was just so concerned about her doing that journey by herself.
The bare bones Googling I did gave me, like, the result you expect when you look up a native population anywhere in the world where white people have spent a lot of time. Which is, it's been bad, and it continues to be bad to be a member of the Sami people. And I really, like we said, we're not qualified to judge whether or not this film represents them well at all in terms of contemporary stuff or in terms of, like, the actual content of the film. Like, so it is really a shot in the dark. All we can say is that there are some things that give us bad vibes, but nothing so bad that we have to be explicit about, because it does kind of do that thing where they're not the bad guys, but they are still clearly alienated, and they're sort of very favorably treating the main characters, but we also don't really get much of a sense of their interiority as a consequence of the language barrier. And so, like, we get the sense that they've got the same, like, positive, like, feeling. They want to help others in exchange, after being helped vibe, but we don't get a full sense of personhood. And all of that adds up to a stack of red flags on top of, hey, this is a native population that has historically been treated badly. So, like, viewer beware. And I encourage you to do some research, because, heck, I hadn't heard of these people by this name before. I've heard of them by other names, other not appropriate names, it turns out. But woof.
I actually had heard of them before, but only because of my anthropology classes in college, talking about how they're losing their land currently in legal battles.
Of course.
So, like, the land that they still have, that's what I knew of them. And that was it. And it's purely just because of college courses, because the American education system doesn't even teach you about the boarding schools that happened in America and how long they lasted. That happened to the Native American populations here. Why the hell would they teach you about like, indigenous people populations elsewhere? That's a whole nother conversation, and we already just, like, skidded right past the whole communism for kids thing. So overall.
Yeah, overall. Yeah, let's talk overall. We're coming to the end here, so let's talk overall.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what are my thoughts as sort of the newbie today? As the person that's
what did you think of the movie?
Overall,
what did you think of the movie?
I loved it. Like I keep saying, Santa's New Groove is hot. It is beautiful. I'd love it if it weren't a Christmas movie. The fact that it is, I love it. In another way, it gets me to think about how I feel about Christmas movies as a genre. It gets me to think about animated movies, about how it's created on a formalistic level, about the stories it tells, just about how fundamentally beautiful it is. It engages me, and the characters are, like, touch me. And, like, even when even when the story is kind of in a dark, ugly place, you're still really engaged because of how well it's being told, about how compelling everything is. And like I said, it all comes down to kind of a heartwarming core and a lot of interesting takes and new directions for this sort of genre and subject matter that are poignant and valuable and breathe a life into it that does the thing that I think is kind of the ultimate failure of so much of Christmas media, is that it ties all of these positive messages to one specific time of year. Whereas I think this one, it is so successful. It it is not separate from Christmas, but it is decentered Christmas as a core of its storytelling to such a degree that you can carry a lot of the heart and soul of it and still be a fan of and watch this movie outside of the specific context of that time of year. And that is valuable,
Yeah,
beautiful,
I definitely do.
and radical. And I'm all for it. I love this. I'm so glad that I got a chance to watch this.
I will add this on. One of the reasons why I love this movie, but I'm also kind of sad when I watch it, is because it proves how good 2D animation can still be and how it can hold up against 3D animation, even now as we move into an era where, like, most animated movies now use, like, a 3D modeling system of some kind when they're animating, or a lot of, like, CGI in live-action movies. And there's a whole conversation that can be had about CG effects versus real effects and, like, 2D versus 3D animation. But I feel like this movie proves that 2D can stand on the same ground, head to head, even with 3D animation. And I'm kind of worried that even though it does, it will be one of the last, like, great 2D animated movies made. And I kind of hope it doesn't. It's something to think about.
I kind of see this as a harbinger of hope, kind of, for the 2D animated movie. This, along with, like, movies like The Song of the Sea and that new Wolf Girl movie that Apple TV is criminally locking away from us. I'm going to get that on DVD, or I'm going to pirate it, or whatever it takes to watch those two adorable Wolf Girl lesbians. I'm very excited about them. But
pirating isn't we do not condone pirating. It's not a good thing. But I have seen it.
Arr.
It's really good.
Oh my god. Anyway,
we don't condone pirating, though.
I think that this movie, taken alongside that sort of series from that other studio whose name I forget, you know, The Song of the Sea, the one that does all the Celtic stories that are awesome and, like, beautiful. I take these as a harbinger of a new and a very different kind of future for 2D animation, because previously it was sort of the domain of the super rich studio corporations to make all the popular animated movies, and now all the best ones are coming out of these European studios that aren't big Hollywood money, except for, I guess, Netflix kind of counts as big money, but it's not Hollywood, and it's got a lot more diversity in terms of content.
Yeah.
But it's definitely clearly indicating 2D is going to have a life. It's coming from other studios, other radical creative people. It's still, at least in, like, places that aren't Japan, focused on children's media, but, you know, you can't win them all. It's nonetheless, they're beautiful, and clearly there are going to be more of them. And I look forward to this bright, shiny new world with the de-Disneyfication of 2D animation, and with that, a radical stylism that this sort of movie shows off, while still, as I keep saying, clearly having, like, you know, a distant love for some other Disney classics and animated classics in general.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I know. How dare I make you be the optimist, but I'm sure this won't be the last time. For now, though, I've been your host, Taylor.
And I've been the newbie for the week, Noah.
And Noah, you finally caught Klaus.
Oh my gosh.
I keep saying
and it's wonderful.
Klaus,
oh man.
It's so wonderful. Anyway.
Thank y'all so much for watching.
Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked our discussions on the animated Netflix movie Klaus, please subscribe to support our channel. Likes are wonderful and greatly appreciated too. If you want to see these episodes get made before they go up on YouTube and Spotify, you can find our Twitch channels to the bottom right and in the description below. We record the episodes on both channels at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights. So, do you guys think Klaus is, like, dead, or is he just magically part of the universe now? Like, I feel like that ending makes it kind of clear, but does magic really exist in the movie? Feel free to comment below.